Well, thank you all for joining me today. Would like to start with just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves and your connection to cleft and a little bit about your cleft journey. I'm going to start with Bhavana.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Bhavana Karnik here. I currently live in Chicago, Illinois. I just graduated from my MBA and work as a category manager at Amazon. I was born with a bilateral cleft lip as well as a palate, and I've worked and helped out with Smile Train for the last 6 years or so as part of a young leadership circle that Lou confidently runs, as well as I've done some data analysis work for the comprehensive cleft care teams with a couple of folks. Yep.
My name's Grace Murphy. I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and I was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate. I just finished high school, so I'm an incoming undergraduate student at California Polytechnic State University. And these past 3 years, I've been a part of the Student Ambassador program. So most of my Smile Train work has been through the Student Ambassador program. But then when I was younger, I also did birthday party fundraisers, in lieu of gifts, getting donations. So throughout my life, Smile Train has kind of been a constant part, and then just more so in my own independent way in recent years.
Hi, my name is Mark Kroeger. I am from Cincinnati. I've lived in Chicago the last 7 years or so. I have notes, but I can also do debits and credits. I can write, but I can do the debits and credits. You got to get the numbers right. I work in business turnarounds, so I help struggling companies come back to profitability and remain into the future. So I was born with a unilateral cleft lip. Mine was very mild. I was incredibly fortunate for that reason, but a lot of the stuff that you've already heard is stuff that I've experienced too, and we'll get into that in a little bit. When I was in college, I think this is an important point. When I was in college, I finally got it was at the end of my college career. I kind of finally had the maybe emotional space to say, okay, well, I can do something, I can give back a little bit. And that's going to come back later as we discuss. But you don't always have that. But in the moments that you do, those are the good moments that you can offer that. And so I started a charity event. We raised $250 for Smile Train the first year. And then the people continued it on the next number of years. Then my little brothers got to college, and it turned into an event that raised $10,000. 1 year it raised $20,000. And so a whole bunch over a period of time in it. To me, that's it's a piece of what we can do as cleft-affected people or people who care about this community at all. So anyway, not to be too verbose. The people who know me know that I am.
That's quite all right. I got to have someone to balance me out because I'm going to be too verbose. But I'm so excited for each of y'all to be here. It would be great if you could share a little bit more about your cleft journeys and some of the treatments that you've been through, kind of set some context for the advice that we give for parents later.
Sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate in California, so I was fortunate enough to get all of my care through the UCLA healthcare system as well as the Kaiser system. And I had a couple of surgeries to close the gap and some revision surgeries, all pretty much before the age of 10. And really the stark memories of my treatment journey is really the bone graft and the jaw realignment surgery out in 3rd and 4th grade, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But after those surgeries, it was mostly just orthodontic work for me. So I was pretty fortunate in the sense that I didn't have hearing or speech issues as well. But the orthodontic work carried on all the way till about 11th grade.
So like I said, I was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate in Evanston, which is right north of Chicago. So I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of great options for cleft treatment. I had my first surgery at Memorial, which is now Lurie's. And I've also had surgeries at Advocate, and then most recently I've had my care done at Shriners. I would say in my mind at least, the greatest majority of my cleft journey has been speech therapy and that orthodontic and dental treatment. because like I remember like as early on as I can remember when I was like late to talking and had speech issues throughout like all of elementary school, I had speech therapy like that was provided through the school. And then I also remember like having orthodontic care like way earlier than any other kids starting in like kindergarten. I remember always being like the youngest one there. So that was kind of like in my mind at least like the bulk of what I remember and like the difficulties there. But I've also then had 2 nasal revisions and then a bone graft when I was 15, so in high school. And then I also had an earlier revision when I was younger. So in total, I've had 5 surgeries and then like a lot of orthodontic care and speech therapy and other like side appointments throughout my life. And then fortunately, I'm looking forward to like kind of like the conclusion pretty soon where I'm getting an implant. And that hopefully will be kind of like my last step throughout like my childhood cleft treatment. So I'm looking forward to kind of like putting the treatment portion mainly behind me and like looking forward to what's to come.
I consider myself incredibly fortunate. I was born with a cleft lip, but it was like kind of closed to begin with. I didn't even see pictures of it. Somebody else mentioned this earlier. I didn't even see pictures of it until I like asked for them a few years ago. But it was very small, but I had corrective surgery within probably 3 months of when I was born. And then that seemed to be it, basically. Orthodontic care was different. They say it's 2 years for braces, but 2 and 6 aren't the same.
There he goes with those numbers again.
So I'll just make that statement now. If there's ever a question that you have as far as the treatment or care that you're getting, go seek different options. I'm sure there are way better options now, as other people have alluded to as well. As far as cleft care, so continue to go seek that. I'm not sure that my orthodontist, I don't blame the person, but I think that there are opportunities to find the right doctors who have the right experience. So I would advise to go seek that out. Actually, from that perspective, something that the people from Smile Train will say is specifically with the service that they deliver to children across the world, it's better to fix it the first time than to fix it the wrong way and then go to try to correct that. So I think that's a good thing to just keep in mind. And my boss said something about that the other day, just in general, about another healthcare issue. But that applies broadly. Most of what I say applies more broadly than just this. But yeah, I had a sideways tooth, and it was 6 years of orthodontics. And so I guess that's that.
All right. Well, thank you. I also had a sideways tooth. That was quite the challenge. I feel for you. That orthodontics will get you. Wow. Growing up with a cleft or being cleft-affected can have a lot of challenges. Some of them are medical. Some of them, the harder ones, may not even be medical. What were some of the challenges that you each experienced growing up, and what kind of advice would you give for parents as their children are going through this?
Yeah, so as I kind of reflected back on this question, I think there were 3 main challenges that I personally faced, and maybe some advice I could give to parents that parallel those challenges. I think the first is that this journey is incredibly long and incredibly daunting, and I still remember some of my scariest memories of 10 white lab coat doctors surrounding me in UCLA and kind of poking my face, and I have no idea what they're doing today or what they're about to do or what they're even analyzing. And that can be really scary because you're constantly in these orthodontic appointments or these pre-surgical appointments. And the advice I would give is if your child is curious, or maybe just to prep them just a little bit, try to get as much knowledge about the process and what's about to happen as you can, and equip yourself with that knowledge. And if your kid is curious and wants to know, just that might ease their anxiety a little bit, even though it's never going to not be daunting because it is a scary process. I think the second challenge I face is that, as much as I had amazing parents and a support system throughout that my whole cleft journey, it is lonely. I mean, you are going into those surgical rooms yourself, and while your parents might be sitting in the orthodontic room, you're in those orthodontic appointments yourself, and you're wearing the braces and facing the kids at school yourself. And I think that the advice I'd give parents is the little moments truly matter. I think when so many people have dedicated their presentations to their parents, and I would do the same if I had a PowerPoint or just even verbally. I still remember when I had the bone graft surgery, which is probably for a lot of people in this room, one of the hardest surgeries they've been through. Having my mom sit there in the gurney and grind up my favorite pretzels, right? Because I could only eat liquidy foods. That stuff matters. It's what you remember. And it gets you through those moments. And so I would say the little moments matter and be there. And I think the third thing I would say is what has already been covered. I think you are going to get bullied, or you're going to be asked questions that are tough at school, like did you fall down a sidewalk? Like what happened? I think it's already been covered in this presentation and in this day, but give your kids the confidence to go out there. Like, this does not define you. There are so many people with cleft lip and palate that are going out there and succeeding in this world and happy, right? Give them the confidence to go out there and be proud of themselves and who they are. And now there's so many more resources out there to see other cleft-affected individuals and what they're up to, which wasn't there when I was growing up. So give them those resources, give them the confidence, because it really doesn't define you, and so much of this is fixable and treatable, and pretty much you're done with the physical and the treatment aspect of it by the time you hit college. So, yeah.
One thing I would say, throughout my entire cleft journey, one thing that was really difficult for me was having to kind of sit out. I was really athletic growing up. I played a lot of sports. I was constantly moving and doing something. So having to take 6 weeks or however long it was, the recovery period off of sports, meant feeling like I was a different person, that I wasn't connected to my same social group, and I felt like I had lost a part of me for those 6 weeks. So that was always really difficult. Besides just not being able to play, I felt also like I was isolated from my friends who were still able to play. But one thing that definitely helped me a lot were my parents finding different ways to keep me entertained and engaged with my friends, even when I said I didn't really want to, because in hindsight it really helped me to still feel connected and have my friends kind of know what I was going through, but then also support me even if it wasn't what we would normally do. So my parents were amazing, and they helped me. They kind of contacted my friends for me and brought them over to our house when I was recovering to just watch TV, watch movies, do TikToks, literally anything to distract me and take my mind off it. And that honestly really helped me to get through those really tough weeks where I was recovering but also wasn't able to do stuff I normally like to do, especially when I was older and I was very aware of what I was going through and what was going on. So that's definitely one main thing I would say. And then also one thing that my parents did, especially my mom, who's very outgoing and social, she was able to form connections with our medical professionals and make it a personal connection, a personal relationship, because you are seeing those people a lot, and you're seeing them a lot, and you need to be comfortable with them, and it makes it just the whole experience a little less daunting if you know who's doing the procedure, and they can talk to you about not just what they're doing, but also how school's going, or how your friends are, or how this sport's going, because it makes it feel just more comfortable in a less foreign environment. So my mom, I believe it was she went to high school with my dentist, which obviously that doesn't always happen, but that helped make some nice connections, and it helped make conversation. But then also other doctors that she didn't know, we were still able to connect with and become comfortable with, and I was able to learn about them, and they were able to learn about me. So instead of them just seeing me as another kid with a cleft, or just another kid getting treatment, they saw me as a whole person, and who I was, and what I liked doing. And I saw them not just as a dentist or a doctor, but as someone with kids, someone with a family, someone who liked to go golfing on the weekends. So that definitely helped ease all the anxiety that naturally came with appointments, and just made the whole thing a lot less scary and more just comfortable.
I would say, I kind of alluded to this a little earlier. I think most of what I could say on this subject, some of it's most of it's broadly applicable. It's not just related to any cleft-affected person. It's much more broad than that. I mean, it's applicable to almost everybody, and I think somebody said that earlier or something like that. But in the context of here, there's obviously the bullying aspect of it. Whether yours is very minor like mine or if it's more significant, I think when I came to the moment of realization where I was kind of like emotionally able to give back some, it was with this kind of idea, well, if mine was that simple, that's how I felt, well, then imagine what other people might be feeling. And I think that was kind of a transitional moment for me as far as going from perhaps feeling bad about myself to doing something about it. And doing something about it for me was giving back through Smile Train. A piece of that story is if you're a parent, so my mom would always tell me, you're no different than anybody else. I can't even see it. And I believed that for a long time. I couldn't either. There was a time, it was probably like after 6th grade or something like that, when you start becoming interested in other things. I was at like diving practice and some girl made a comment to me at the pool. And it was an innocuous comment, but it was something like why do you look different, or why, what's that? But up until that point, I couldn't see it because my mom said you can't see it. I couldn't see it. So I became very self-conscious at that point. And then there was a time through high school too where people also said stuff. I only said this to my parents maybe a few years ago, that I was bullied at all. They didn't know that. Because I thought, well, if I say that to my mom, like, it's going to break her heart. And that is something that would break your mom's heart. But having that conversation was important. But the advice for parents would be in understanding that your child might be going through something that you can't see, or maybe that they're withholding from you. So be observant, be attentive, be gentle. Take all the advice that you just heard from all these other people in supporting your child. This is probably for children and their parents as well. If you can find an opportunity to give back, and here's obviously one for all of us, Smile Train, you can kind of flip the script and turn this from some type of story that's a woe is me into hey, I'm doing something really good for people who are really important in this world. And the first CleftCon event was in 2020, and there was a global pandemic. So it got taken indoors. It was online. I was a moderator of one of the speaking sessions, I guess. It was this whiteboard type of thing. There was an artist for every breakout room. And when I heard about what it was a bit, it could be daunting, I guess, because the prompt was basically something like words that you think about with cleft. And that could either go in a really good way or a really bad way. But what happened that day was incredibly positive things from a whole bunch of people who came together to understand, where they were, where they're going. The words that I offered then, which I still believe in, and actually other people have already said something like this, and I'm not saying anything new, but behind every face that looks a little different, there's a beautiful mind. And we all have to remember that, because there are incredible people in this room. There are incredible people around us. Again, this is broadly applicable. It's not just a cleft thing, but we can start here and we can share that feeling around us.
Awesome. Thank you. We have one last question before we go into a Q&A type session. We have parents and family members of all stages of care here right now. We have parents with children just about to go into treatment. We have parents of folks going, or teenagers and kind of right in the thick of it, and parents and family members and friends of folks who are adults affected with cleft. What's kind of the one piece of advice, the one takeaway that you would want each of these parents to kind of draw from this event?
Maybe you guys want to go first.
I'll take it first. Yeah. I think, I haven't been a parent, so I don't know this, but I think that if you're a parent, this would be evident to you. But your kid's a normal kid. They are a regular person. They have incredible qualities, and they're going to live a great life. And so what you can do to help them through this piece is incredibly important, and who they will be over the next 30 years or so, or hopefully 50 years while you're still here. They're going to impress you. That's reality. That's science. They're going to surprise you, and they're going to make you incredibly proud.
I can go next. I would say learn how to normalize a cleft without ignoring it, or any facial or any difference, because it's don't treat it like absolutely nothing is different. Don't ignore that there is something, that there's a scar, that there's more appointments, because kids know that and they'll pick up on it, but normalize it so they don't think it's something that's wrong with them, or they need to, that it needs to be fixed to fit someone's standard of beauty, or anything like that. Make sure they know that just because it's different doesn't mean that it's gonna hinder them in what they want to do or what they want to achieve. That it has nothing, it doesn't set you back in any way on the life that you can live, just because you might look a little different, or you've had different childhood experiences with treatment, doesn't mean that your future is limited in any regard. So normalize that they're different, but don't ignore and disregard what they've been through.
You just said it so well. That's tough to follow up. I think especially for parents and kids who are probably in the early stage of this treatment journey, or kind of in the midst of it, it is tough, it is painful, it is long. But I can assure you that everybody who's gone through it is really proud of what they've been through. And just know that, just like anything in life where it's tough, it's not rewarding or impactful, it's not tough a lot of the time. And as someone who's kind of been on the other side of it now, it's probably one of the proudest things I hold myself to have gone through. So just know that you're going to get through it, and you're going to be proud of it. And just like Mark said, you're going to come back and hopefully contribute back to the next generation of folks who have it, just like a lot of people in this room are doing today.
That last one almost got me there for a little bit. Okay. Well, I'm honored to call each of you peers and friends in the cleft community, so thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about yourselves. We have 7.5 and losing on time to share for Q&A, so if anyone has any questions for any of our guests, feel free to ask now. Oh, we got some in the back. Sorry, we got to make you run through the crowd.
Okay, I just have a question. My son is 2.5 years old he was born with an incomplete cleft lip, gum notch, and cleft of the soft palate. And so my question is for you guys, was there ever a time where you're like, I really just don't want to do this other surgery, and you wish your parents would have listened, cosmetically? Does that make sense? I guess my son has a little bit of extra lip, and it's almost do you put him through it again to have him get it done, or have you ever been through that?
You both have had more surgeries than I have. I have a treatment that I have put off since I was probably 16. Both of you could probably speak to the persistent surgeries, and I could probably speak to delaying a surgery due to cost and stuff from when I was 16 to now, and I'm 34.
I could go first. I had a second rhinoplasty and like deviated septum surgery when I was 16, and I debated like I didn't really want the surgery. It was technically optional, but like highly, highly, highly recommended for one, like cosmetics, but two, like also try to like additionally help open up my like breathing passageway because I can't really like breathe through my nose. And personally, I think it's different at different ages. I was 16, I was like in high school, it was summer. My friends were like going out in the city, like doing like any like fun teenager things. And we ultimately decided as a family to do that surgery, which I personally kind of wish we hadn't just because I feel like it did a little more harm than good in terms of like where I was at in life and like how much it helped versus how much it kind of drew me back from my friends and like from experiencing summer and like time off in a way. But I would say also though, if I had another like revision surgery when I was 5, so I was like in a completely different chapter and point in life. And although that like surgery was needed to like finalize like my palate, it was also like did do some cosmetic good as well. So I would say like especially if a child's young and like they don't completely comprehend like what they're missing out on, I think like personally I think cosmetic surgery could be helpful and beneficial. But if they are like older, like as they get older, I think really the main thing is just to listen to how they listen to what they want and like their opinion on it. Because when a kid's older, they pretty much understand like what it's gonna entail. So I would say like it definitely depends on where they're at in life. So yeah.
I can chime in here too.
Yeah, of course. So your child is not alone. I still remember when the bone grafting surgery, which is maybe 10 years ahead of your child's age right now. I remember I got the jaw alignment, and every day my mom had to like screw the braces or something to move the jaw forward, the wiring. And I was just like done with it, right? Like how many times are you going to get the same thing done day after day? So you're not alone. I think they said it well in terms of when you do get older, you do have a little bit more of a concept of, hey, this is what's about to happen. And I never delayed a procedure or a process. I kind of just listened to the orthodontic care and the surgical care I was given back in California. So I can't speak to delaying anything, but just know that those emotions and I'm kind of done with this, I don't want to do this is not rare. But you'll get through it, right? You'll get through it, and you'll be proud of it. So, yeah.
Got one more over there.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Molly. I have a son, 2 years old. He was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate. Grace, I loved what you said about just normalizing conversation. And he's 2, so he doesn't really like to sit to talk to me very much. But I'm already trying to kind of start some of those conversations with him just to let him know, like, his journey is something that he should be incredibly proud of, and don't hide from the scar. But I don't know if you guys remember any really early conversations that you had with your parents about your journey that were super impactful, or things that they said to you that kind of opened that door of communication.
I can go. I think just like one thing that my mom would say is like everyone has something. I know like in one of the previous presentations, everyone has scars. Like maybe it's not a cleft lip and palate, but everyone has like something going on, whether it's medical, emotional, physical, like, and someone always has, like everyone always has something else going on. No one's life is like a breeze. Everyone's going through something. Everyone like sees a flaw or sees something negative about themselves. So just like recognizing that, and even though like you might not know anyone else with a cleft, everyone else like around you is thinking there's something else wrong with them. So like it's not like you're alone in any regard, even if you're the only person like with that specific thing. Everyone's going through like this same idea that there's something like different about them, when in reality, like everyone has like something different about them, and that's kind of just like what makes everyone so unique and like makes life meaningful, because you meet so many people with different experiences. So just kind of recognizing that like everyone has something, and even though you might feel alone, you're really not.
I can go next. Yeah, I got very similar advice to that. Also, whenever I would my parents threw me into a ton of activities, from sports to oral language to debate to everything. And they'd always say, like, did your cleft lip and palate, did that affect that? You just won this trophy, or you just succeeded in this? And like reaffirming that this wasn't affecting so much of my daily activities or my schoolwork. And although it takes time away from your schoolwork when you have to do surgery sometimes and so forth, it truly wasn't impacting my ability to participate in a lot of activities outside of time it took for the surgeries and recovery time, right? So they reinforced that a lot, that like there was nothing I couldn't do that a lot of other kids were doing to succeed and move forward academically or extracurricularly.
For me, I think what Grace said is important. I think that I learned that at the end of high school. We had a retreat called Kairos that a number of you in this room might have done something like that or specifically that. But what you learned in that was, it was a pretty open thing at our school. And people told their life stories and all kinds of things. And what I came to learn at that point was specifically what Grace said, which was, you know, everybody's going through something, and it's the same people who are making fun of you. And then you find out how deep their hurt is for something else. And it might be out of their control. It might be because they have overburdening parents and grade pressures and all this other stuff. It could be any number of things. It could be emotional things, all kinds of things. But when you see that, then it's like, okay, well, it helps you get that point of understanding. I think for me then, that was a bit of a moment of understanding that I wish I would have had sooner. But I'm happy that I had then, because that led me to giving back. And I think that if you involve your child, if it's right for you and your family, to giving back to something Smile Train specific or something like Smile Train, even just something else in your community, I think that's really important because you can find purpose there. I know Chelsea's done an incredible job with that in her life and her son's life. But that's something to think about and consider, because it just brings a whole lot of meaning to something that otherwise you're left with just questions.
Thank you so much. I don't know if this is hot anymore. Oh, there we are. I was like speaking. We probably have a few more questions in the audience, but we're actually slated to head for a 10-minute break still. Yes? What's up? We got one more question in the back, or are we okay if we go over that time? Yeah, we got one more question in the back, and then we'll head over to a 10-minute break. I can hear you. I can hear you.
You know, that's interesting, because I had a very similar experience to Mark as you were talking about. I never told my parents I was bullied, which is really interesting when I think about it, and I never thought about it until you just mentioned that, really. So I am not the best person to answer this question, but that's such a good thing to think about. So I'll pass that to both of you if you have thoughts on that question. But
You can go ahead.
Okay. I don't know. I think that's a great question. I don't know how to answer that from an internal perspective within a school. I think. Okay. Can we see the floor here?
Please, yes. Yeah.
I'm an educator, and teachers are in the classroom, and teachers, do hear, what happens on the playground. The bullying doesn't necessarily happen. It doesn't happen in the classroom. It happens at lunch, or it happens on the playground. And so I'll sometimes get kids coming into me saying, well, so-and-so, and then that's on the teacher, and they should do something, or email the parent, or let them know, because I do.
We,
But it does happen, but it doesn't happen in the classroom, it happens outside. It happens in gym class. It happens in art class. It happens when the normal teacher isn't around, so, or hormone teacher.
yeah. We joke in my family that we just sicked my baby sister on them and she would beat them up for me. But the biggest thing is, like, at least in my family that worked particularly well with me, and I've been trying not to chime in here, is we circled the wagons at home. And so no matter how bad anything got at school, like, I knew I had a safe spot at home. And I knew that no matter what, my 5'2" sister now, who probably is, she's very tiny, would beat up anyone who ever talked. And it wasn't about that, but it was about I always have my safe space at home. And so, like, investing more in that relationship, I knew I could always come home and talk about it. And that was, like, the biggest thing for me. And Chelsea, did you have anything to chip in there?
I'm sure it changes as kids get older, but I think when they're younger, I know even like using, I don't know where Patty you're sitting, but Patty's books, like sending them into school, and like if there's a big surgery coming up, to kind of prepare the class for knowing like this is what's going on. And I think young children are really receptive to knowing and having that information prior to the surgery happening or prior to the child being outside of school, to kind of know and like let the teacher guide them through kind of what that looks like. And, you know, I've heard great stories like get well cards and like books being sent and stuff like that. So I think the teacher has a lot of power in making that be more of a special moment than a sad one.
Well, I think we're about to move into a 10-minute break. I will only speak for myself. If you guys have more questions, feel free to ask any of us as you come through. But we're going to move on to another 10-minute break. Thank you so much for your great questions, and thank you again.